Coming up on today's show, I've got 3 season-changing trade ideas for the Cleveland Browns, and coincidentally, they're all with the Las Vegas Raiders. So we're going to run through each trade idea and kind of go through the pros and cons of each one. But before we look at my first trade idea, we are in a sub-battle for the month of October with the Steelers Talk and the Ravens Rundown channels here at Chat Sports. We've got a subtle lead on the Ravens channel, but we're 5 subs behind Steelers Talk. So let's win the month of October. Hit the sub button down below. Now, my first trade idea is this. The Browns get, drum roll please, Kolton Miller from the Raiders, their starting left tackle, in exchange for Jedrick Wills and a 2024 second-round pick. Remember, as I go through all these trade ideas, the Browns do not have a first-round selection in 2024, so we got to make do with what we have here, and that is a second and some change. But Kolton Miller has been one of the best tackles in football since he entered the league, in my opinion. He's just been kind of buried away because he's on the dumpster fire Las Vegas Raiders. Former first-round pick out of UCLA by the Raiders, and he has started 83 games at left tackle out of a possible 86 games. Now, he signed a pretty big 3-year contract extension with the Raiders not long ago, so he is, in fact, under contract through 2025. So if the Browns traded for Kolton Miller tomorrow, they'd have him for the rest of 2023, all of 2024, and all of 2025. Now, his cap hits over the next 2 seasons are $15.6 million. So it would cost a pretty penny. You're not picking up some really good, cheap left tackle, right? This would be a major investment. For what it's worth, Jedrick Wills' 5th-year option next year comes in a little over $14 million. So pound for pound, you're not paying all that much more for Kolton Miller compared to Jedrick Wills next year, but there would be an extra year of his contract. Now, look at their PFF grades and stats through 2023. It's a landslide. Kolton Miller has been a top 5 tackle, whereas Jedrick Wills has been a bottom 5 tackle. The overall grade, 81.2 to 45.4. Jedrick Wills has more penalties, same amount of sacks allowed, but over double of the amount of pressures allowed. There is no comparison when it comes to Kolton Miller versus Jedrick Wills. Kolton Miller is hands down the better tackle in football. And Andrew Berry spoke to the media during his press conference yesterday, and he acknowledged that Jedrick Wills needs to improve. When your GM goes out there and says even the slightest negative thing about you, that's a very large statement because usually GMs and coaches, they never want to say anything negative or badmouth any of their players. For even Andrew Berry to suggest that Jedrick Wills needs to improve, a.k.a. you're under a microscope, Jed, and if we don't see dramatic, and I mean dramatic improvement before October 31st, the NFL trade deadline, there could be some changes made on the offensive line. I think the tough truth, the tough medicine we have to swallow right now is Jedrick Wills, he's not a left tackle, right? He was a right tackle at Alabama. Cleveland moved him over to left tackle. They've got the best offensive line coach in the NFL and Bill Callahan. But at some point, we just have to accept Jedrick Wills is not a left tackle, and my prediction is wherever he goes next in his career, because I don't see him getting a second contract from the Browns, they're going to move him back to right tackle. But let me know, would you do this trade? You swap Kolton Miller for Jedrick Wills, and to make up for the Raiders getting the worst tackle, you kick in a second-round pick. I know this might seem like a slam dunk idea, but keep in mind, that means the Browns do not have a first or a second-round draft pick in the upcoming NFL draft. My second trade idea has the Browns receiving Davante Adams in exchange for Donovan Peoples-Jones, a second-round pick in 2024, and a third-round pick in 2025. So much more compensation going over for Davante Adams compared to Kolton Miller because it's Davante freaking Adams, right? That makes a lot of sense to us. Now, before we expand on this trade idea, today's Cleveland Browns report is sponsored by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. If you're trying to catch an upcoming Browns game or you want to see a concert or a Cavs game or anything else in your area, Game Time is the place to visit first. What I love about Game Time specifically is the ability to get last-minute tickets for the lowest price. There is nothing better than a spur-of-the-moment boys trip. I've got producer Patrick Seaman in the studio today, and we cooked up a boys trip to go see a college football game in Charlotte, North Carolina over some drinks. Well, with Game Time, they gave us $20 off our ticket, so that was an awesome bonus right there. They're obsessed with finding ways to help you save money on tickets. Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event and even an hour after it starts. It's the place to find last-minute seats. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code BROWNSCHAT for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code BROWNSCHAT for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. More on Davante Adams, though, as he is in his second season with the Raiders, and even if the Raiders are a bit of a dumpster fire right now, Davante Adams is still looking like a top 3 wide receiver in the league, and he's closer to 1 than 3. He's at nearly 400 yards through 4 games, so slightly under 100 yards to game average, and 3 touchdowns as he comes off back-to-back 1,500-yard seasons with 14 TDs in 2022. Meanwhile, Cleveland's wide receiver room, it's not looking bad. It's not. You might thought I was going to say something else. I don't think the Browns wide receiver room is anything all that horrible or hideous, but it's Davante Adams, right? That's all you really need to say. In fact, you could talk any team into trading for Davante Adams. Trying to go on a Super Bowl run? Go get Davante Adams. You got a young quarterback? Give him Davante Adams. So if Andrew Berry starts to feel like these wide receivers are not going to push this offense over the edge, insert Davante Adams, and all of your problems are solved. I would agree that this one is very far-fetched. Ultimately, I don't think the Raiders are going to trade Davante Adams to anyone. He wants to stay near home. His home is in California. He's getting paid a lot of money to live in Las Vegas. That's a pretty good setup if you're Davante Adams. But the Raiders are the Raiders, and the Josh McDaniels, Dave Ziegler brass, they've got some screws loose upstairs. So I would not be blown away if they pull a 180 and move on from Davante Adams if they get a really good haul in return. But if you were Andrew Berry, would you trade for a wide receiver, or do you like the current unit right now of Amari Cooper, DPJ, and Elijah Moore? AB said he likes the current unit when he's speaking to the media, but a lot can change between now and October 31st. So take a spin at it, sit in AB's chair, and let me know if you would trade for a wide receiver. Trade idea number 3. This one's pretty simple. Josh Jacobs goes over for a third-round pick. I don't need to really explain why the Browns would be interested in trading for Josh Jacobs. Obviously, with the loss of Nick Chubb, that opens up a spot in the running back room, and your reigning NFL rushing leader could be on the move. However, he's not having a very good year so far. He's averaging 2.7 yards a carry. And you might say, well, the Raiders have a horrible offensive line, right? That's sort of the casual response anytime a running back's not off to a good start. The Raiders have like a middle-of-the-pack offensive line, Jeremy, wouldn't you say? Like, there's better, but there's worse offensive lines out there. Meanwhile, Cleveland's running back duo, it's not a huge sample size in terms of just the two of these guys leading the backfield, Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt. We're just 2 games into this experience, but I haven't really enjoyed this experience. This is looking like one of those Disney rides that has its name changed really quickly, and it's just awful trivia later on because Kareem Hunt, I wasn't super jazzed up when they signed him because I didn't think I didn't think the Browns were going to get that, peak Kareem Hunt version we had seen before, and Jerome Ford is an RB2, not an RB1. And right now he's being forced to play RB1, and he's doing the best he can, but the reality is the Browns are all in on this season. So they did not expect to lose Nick Chubb for the remainder of the year, just 2 games in, and now they are forced to make a really tough decision. Go move on for another running back like Josh Jacobs, who, if you trade for Jacobs or if you trade for Jonathan Taylor, you might see a contract extension coming for one of those 2 guys. And if that's the case, that's the end of the Nick Chubb era in Cleveland. So the Browns have to make a big long-term move right now as to whether or not Nick Chubb is going to return and play football. And if they don't think he is, they might be in the market for a Jacobs or a Taylor or another back. I'm also somewhat torn just because I don't think Josh Jacobs is all that good of a running back, to be honest with you guys. It was not the best rushing experience I've ever seen last year out of a rushing title. So I'm not jumping up and down for Josh Jacobs as I am for a guy like Jonathan Taylor, who I think is much better. But of the three trades we just looked at here, which one is your favorite? Is it improving the offensive line with Kolton Miller? Is it getting, the best wide receiver in the NFL, arguably, in Davante Adams, but giving up a decent haul for him? Or is it improving your ground game with Josh Jacobs, who, like I said, self-admittedly, he's better than Kareem Hunt and Jerome Ford. I won't argue that, but I just don't think Josh Jacobs is all that great of a running back. That's pretty wild to say out loud after he just led the NFL in rushing a season ago, but I'd rather have Nick Chubb or anyone over Josh Jacobs. Not the sexy pick, but I'll go with Kolton Miller. Jedrick Wills, he's not it. He is not your franchise left tackle. The Browns picking up his fifth-year option at the time. I wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt. I was like, well, it's decent value, and you get guaranteed left tackle play, even if it's average at best, for 2 more seasons. But it's not average at best. It's below average right now. He is off to the worst start of his 4 seasons. So Kolton Miller could step in at left tackle, keep Deshaun Watson healthy, which right now that is priority number 1. Make sure Deshaun Watson's shoulder is okay. And as Jedrick Wills continues to give up pressures and hits and sacks, Kolton Miller is looking more and more appetizing.